Welcome back, Science 9. As you can hear, I'm not 100% myself, so I'm recording this lesson again. Um, Today, our focus will be Chapter 2. As species reproduce, characteristics are passed from parents to offspring. We used to call it heritable trait. Today, we are going to focus on number 1. There you go. The type of inheritance and variation. We talk about variation in natural selection, but we're going to go with more genetic part of it. And also, we're going to go through one part of reproductive system or method, if you will, asexual reproduction. First of all, there are two types of variation that happen because of or due to the help of heritable trait, which means genetic effect. There's number 1, discrete, and number 2, continuous type. Know the fact that these two, we're going to talk about it as an example, we're going to go through heritable traits. Number 1, discrete variation. When you hear the word discrete, think about it as yes or no, 1 or 2, A or B, those kind of type. It's yes or no type, A or B type, or you have it or not have it, those kind of things. Discrete variation refers to differences in characteristics that have some kind of definite form, defined form. So either you have it or you don't have it. We talked about that before in our survey. Do you have detached earlobe or attached earlobe? Or also, thumb, can you make it straight or can you bend it? Or what else? Do you have widow pick or not? Something like that. So there are several discrete characteristics in animals, plants, format. The one that we talk about was, like I said, um, blood type. We have blood type A, B, O, or AB. There's no spectrum of blood type. It is you either follow that category or not. In this case, we have 4 types. Most of the time, it's yes or no, or true or false kind of type. Binary system is what we call. And that's the one I talk about. We do peak hairstyle versus straight hairline. Something like that. This is where you have one or another. On the other hand, when people mention about continuous variation, you need to know that it is a spectrum. It is a range of form. Something that is a little, how can I say, hard to say between genetic versus environmental play a huge role in here. For example, height. Weight is a little debatable. And also, your how hair length can also be a little debatable. Eye color can be a little debatable in here too. But in any case, height is a perfect example. Height can range from 1.2 meter to 2.1 meter on average. Also mass, like body weight. Now let's revisit our natural selection example. We did an experiment about natural selection using teddygram. Now, if you look at our predator, the predator prefer a certain trait, in this case, green beetle. Now, back in booklet number 1, when I went through natural selection, I didn't explain about continuous and discrete, but according to this example, can you see it look like a discrete example? It's like all or nothing, type A or type B. Type A, green versus type B, when it comes to this, brown color, something like that. However, when it comes to beetles, it has way more than that. In fact, the color of, excuse me, color of the beetles can be a spectrum. So, variations caused by interactions with the environment are generally not inheritable. It is something that a combination of environment and genetic. Environment plays a huge role. Remember, natural selection done by, I like to say, external environmental factors. In this case, we need an influence of the predator. I'm always be careful when I mention about the height and weight situation because nowadays studies suggest that North Americans are taller than they were in 19th century because of environmental factor such as better nutrients intake and variety of the choice of your food. In fact, when it comes to life expectancy compared to 18th centuries to 19th to 20, 21st centuries, we are living longer in North America too, on average. Well, some kind of external factor aside, so for example, gunshot incident, those kind of thing aside, drug usage, those aside, if you just live your life normally. The reason being is we have better sanitization, clean water, better nutrients intake, better healthcare system, etc., etc. So environmental factors are actually start affecting genetic inheritance too. Again, by the choice of natural selection. And that doesn't play a huge role, but it does take some place. You can think about that with the Jurassic World movies lately. How dinosaurs are interacting with the nature ecosystem in this world. This is a data that show the change that happened in 100 years, since 1914 to 2014. It's quite interesting data actually. If you look at the tallest man, now we have a Netherlands as an average of 182 centimeter as an average national height for male. But look at the difference, 169 to 182. Iran, 157 to 173 when it comes to the height differences when it comes to 100 years. Also, when you look at it, biggest height gain, which is South Korea, 142 to 162. I didn't know what environmental factor that caused about that, but apparently that's according to the data. And Guatemala, 140 to 149. So at this point, I want you to give it a shot. Science log activity number 9. I want you to pause this video for about a minute or two, write things down, and let's share. All I want you to do is, I want you to determine what environmental factors play a huge role for weight variation in North America. You know, North America is very well known for obesity, so that can be a little hint. Let's go. Okay, I assume that you guys wrote some of your own explanation how environmental factor can play a huge role for North American citizens, immigrants, weight situation. Number one, let's go with obvious part. In North America, we have a lot of body weight. In the past decades, one of the biggest reasons for that is, I like to say, junk foods that has a lot of cholesterol. Now, also another thing, weight variation. I'm not trying to be racist in here, but if you think about people who has a high weight in North America, a lot of people who's Caucasian play a huge role, but at the same time, lots of refugee type immigrant because organic healthy food are quite expensive. So there are people who's from other countries, relatively poor countries like Latinos, African Americans, they tend to gain lots of weight because they can afford junk food compared to others. And obviously, if your answer was not about these, probably it's a good idea to write down too, in addition to what you think. Also, the third one, this is my personal opinion. I like to say, sorry about that, there was a little cut off. The third one, I like to say cultural diversity. What I mean by that is, for example, when it comes to Asian countries such as Japan and Korea, we used to eat a lot of vegetables and seafood. On the other hand, European heritage situation, there are a lot of meat, alcohol, like wine, and kind of hard to see. And at the same time, like cheese, dairy product, those that have lots of protein but also lots of fat. So you can comprehend that where the weight variation comes from. It's a broad spectrum. Now let's go with two different type of reproductive method that create genetic variation. First of all, reproduction. What is reproduction? It is a method to produce new individual of a species. So basically giving birth. The ways a species reproduces basically determine how much variation the new individual will have in a population. All right, let's go with our first type of reproduction. We call it asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction have this prefix a. Think about it opposite of sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction involves male and female. Asexual reproduction doesn't need gender. So one thing that you need to know is only one parent involved. You have one parent and that somehow replicate and create two, something like that. Very simple method. All offspring during this or throughout this asexual reproduction process and as a result produce and have to produce identical to their parents. So that's why I use this image. It's basically very similar as a cloning technology. Offspring, therefore, all inherit the exact identical characteristic as the parent because the adult makes exact copy of itself. So funny thing is, if you're a blood type AB in that situation, you're gonna have AB and AB type, something like that. Do you think that will give you a lot of variety in a population? I don't think so. So there are a lot of uh, pros and cons about this, but there's distinct benefit and disadvantage. talking about benefits and disadvantage or anything harm, I want you to think about what will be benefit if you asexually reproduce, which is cloning situation. So think about what's the benefit of cloning. What will be the harm, disadvantage of the asexual reproduction? Again, think about what will be the possible disadvantage from cloning. I hope there was a pause in this video so that you could write the benefit and harm. Let's do the sharing part a little bit. Okay, so know the fact that there can be variety of an answer. So let's say good thing about it, bad thing about asexual reproduction. Let's talk about that a little bit. According to the research and scientific evidence, one of the benefit of this asexual reproduction, like cloning, is it's relatively fast. You just do copy and paste. So in that perspective, you can think it as a efficient. You are going to have quite increase of population efficient in that situation. But sadly, that's about it. There are more articles and scientific discovery that talk about more what's a disadvantage of using that. And sadly, there are more disadvantage. So let's go through a little bit. Now, there's lack of variation. That means high chance of endanger or extinction even. Why? Is because it's vulnerable. Imagine if this room is full of a clone of yourself, if one of you guys gets sick because of whatever virus, I mean, ironically, we just went over COVID and it still exists. Imagine there's a specific virus that only works to you. Your population will undergo almost genocide level of population drop. And there's no way to survival because of lack of variation. Imagine that none of us have resistant gene. Let me go through some of the example and wrap up today's class. Number one, we call this method of asexual reproduction as binary fission. This is very common type. It literally have one cell organism, so this is parent. And as time go, parents undergoing some kind of cell division that look like infinity shape, you know, the side-by-side H shape. And at the middle, there will be a break happen. And after that, you have two, we call it daughter cell. So parent cell, daughter cell, I know I'm not being sexist. Yes, there's no gender to start with. And even if it's sexual reproduction, there's a male and female, but daughter cells are genetic way of saying product, if that makes sense with you. So in any case, one parent cell produce two daughter cell. Very simple organism undergo this kind of cell division in the middle and produce two, like bacteria, protists, amoebas, and some algae. The very unique thing about this method is, like what I mentioned, the cell split exact into two. And that process, we generally call it cell division. And I like to say binary cell division. Fancy way of saying bi means two. Cell division, binary cell division, fancy way of saying cell divided into two. The second method of asexual reproduction is, we call it budding. Now, budding means, and I can draw a quick diagram to make you understand about what it means. So imagine we have tree. Bud mean it's like a branch. This branch, you can call it bud too. Budding is a fancy way of saying a smaller part of the clone is growing like a branch, and this individual will be taken off, and that will grow as an adult again. So, smaller version itself is copied as a branch. Some microorganism like Hydra and yeast does that. In Hydra, as you can see, the bud eventually detach off between picture 3 to 4, and that limb part become a new parent. In ocean environment, you can see this coral, in coral reef, similar type of budding happen. As you can see from the body it grows, another body grows, but these guys will eventually detached and then rooted to other place nearby, forming a larger structure composed of many identical part of itself. Sometimes, if there's an adult individual and cut it, those cutted part can develop to new copy of the parents. A lot of simple organism does that. For some reason, people think earthworm, you can cut it and then it will regenerate. No, it's not. But planaria does, which you can find it in a very, very clean water, river, more like a stream. And also starfish, some of them, then they cut off, they become from the limb, they can become an adult too. So fragmentation is, imagine cut is involved, cut and severe part. Part of the body grow as a copy of the parents. You can think it in that way. This is one of our last part today, spore. Spores, as you can know, it's generally done by fungi like mushroom. Under the mushroom's cap, we have spores. But in any case, spores are produced by division of cells of the parents and not by combination of two. So in this case, hypha, as you can see, it's a long arm that grow one to another, and the spores are the one that spreads to the other place like dandelion seed, except it's not dandelion in its seed, but the spores will be going to others nearby and then create another copy of itself. And when it comes to spore, like I mentioned, fungi, some green algae, molds, ferns of certain simple plants, those are the ones that undergo spore reproduction. The interesting thing about these spores is, as you can see, when it comes to 4 seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter, some plants, they die off during the winter time. Plants gave up their leaves during winter time to save up the energy. Spores, on the other hand, some of them can survive for a long period of time because, and even with the extreme circumstance like cold temperature, because they stay dormant, which is like sleeping situation. And when the dormant stage is done, the condition improve and spores can produce new plants. And that's where I'm gonna stop today's lesson. Your homework will be on textbook page 36, number 2 and 9. It's Science in Action 9, page number 36, number 2 and 9. See you next time.